How's it going, everyone? Nick Templin here from Templin Scouting, and today we're going to do a mock draft here on Cap Friendly, the day before the actual draft lottery, so that we just have a little chance to play around with some fun scenarios here that won't be the exact actual scenario that happens, and also just following the U18 tournaments, so we have a bit of movement on my board following all of that. So let's just jump in here and figure out who our lottery winners are going to be. Of course, the Chicago Blackhawks. People aren't going to be too happy about that. And then the Columbus Blue Jackets. That is more like it. All right, so let's head right in here. And so we're going to start off with two really easy ones that we don't really have to talk about too much. Macklin Celebrini, Ivan Demidov. Those are the two best players in the draft. They will go in that order pretty much regardless of who is picking up at the top. Now, moving on to the San Jose Sharks, I really like Artem Levshinov going there. I think that they need to address their defense more than they need to do anything else. Now, obviously, they have more holes than just that. Obviously, they need goaltending. They need just to kind of bolster their forward core because I think they still don't have that true number one forward, which is why losing out on the top two picks would be really rough for them, but I think if Celebrini and Demidov are off the board, Levshinov is definitely the guy they need to be targeting. They need a good puck-moving offensive defenseman, and I think he's going to develop into a pretty good two-way guy as well. I think he has the traits to get himself there. Obviously, he's not there yet, but you don't need to rush him. You can give him another year at Michigan State, and he can probably join the Sharks by the end of next season, which would be kind of the timeline that you're looking at for him. Next up with the Anaheim Ducks, I'm going to have them picking Caden Lindstrom, best player available, best forward available at least. I think that potentially they won't need to address the defense this year. So adding another guy to help that future top six of theirs that is going to look amazing with Leo Carlson and Cutter Gauthier and Troy Terry is going to be there long term. We'll see if Vetrano can kind of recapture the magic that he found this year. I think Caden Lindstrom is a guy that you can wait on for a year. He's going to probably play another year of junior. Doesn't have to. I mean, he's already got the body to play in the NHL. He's a big 6'5" power forward with a lot of skill, and I could see him making that jump, but I think Anaheim is in a position where they can just kind of be patient with him, which is good. So that's kind of the situation for Anaheim. I like that pick a lot for them. Now, this is a tougher pick to kind of project. It's the Montreal Canadiens. I think that for them, they will kind of just be looking for the best forward available on their board, and I think in this situation, I've heard a lot of people talk about Tijik Ginla. For me, he goes later than this. I think that potentially this player will be Berkeley Catton. I think they could definitely use to add another centerman. Now, obviously, that will depend on what their plan is this offseason. If a guy like Trevor Zegras is really, a target for them, then potentially you could see them going in a different direction. But I like the upside of Catton. I think he's a good playmaker. I don't think he is necessarily the highest of ceilings of players. I think that, as far as his abilities, he's really good off the rush, but I think he needs to work on his ability in the cycle game, which is something that is very necessary and important to be a successful offensive player in the NHL. So there is room to grow there, but I think as far as, landing spot, he gets to come in and be a second line center. He'll, get some power play opportunities and stuff and really get to focus on his playmaking game for the first little while. So I think the fit there is good for Berkeley Catton. Next up, we have the Arizona Coyotes. The Utah hockey team, whatever they end up calling themselves next. And so for them, they addressed their defense last year, as at least defensively speaking, with Simashev. They got a pure defensive guy with him. So I think you add in a pure offensive guy like Zane Parekh, and you are really starting to cook with gas there as far as building the future of that team. I think that obviously you do have Sean Dursey, who is really good this year, but I think Parekh has a higher ceiling than that offensively. So I think that, adding a guy like him in will be really good for the Utah hockey team. Next up, the Ottawa Senators. Now, they were hoping to probably get a right-handed defenseman here, either Zane Parekh or Artem Levshinov, as that is kind of the two biggest needs that they have. You could go with Carter Yakimchuk. I think I might actually have them do that this time. I've been kind of trying to say that I think it's a bit of a reach to take him inside the top 10, but I think there's enough upside there. He's a really good two-way guy. Obviously, he's very physical. His defensive game is pretty solid and is continuing to develop. So I do think there's a lot of upside there. He's a really unique player. You don't get a lot of guys who score as many points as he does and collect as many penalty minutes as he does. So obviously, he'll have to clean up the discipline a little bit, but I've seen him throw some really great hits, and he looks like a guy who's going to be really fun to watch at the NHL level, and I think he'll find some chemistry potentially next to a guy like Jake Sanderson. Looking at the Seattle Kraken, this is one that I will continue to project until it happens. I think Anton Saleyev is exactly the kind of piece they would love to add. Just when they have as good of a prospect pool as they have, and they don't really have any major glaring needs long term, I think bringing in the best pure shutdown defenseman in the draft is a great option for them. And I love the way that he played this year in Russia. Obviously, you're not going to expect him to be this super offensive guy, but he is a guy who will shut down the rush every opportunity that he gets and defend the front of the net extremely well. And I think he's going to be just an incredibly valuable player at the NHL level. Next up is Calgary, and I would be surprised if he's still on the board and they don't take him. Now, I know some people have said that maybe he doesn't want to play for the same organization that his dad did, just doesn't want to be compared to him. But I think that, and there's also the possibility with Jerome McGinley working for the Flames now, potentially they don't want to just go and draft his son and have them both be a part of the organization. But I think the fit there is decent enough. I think that he'll probably play the wing at the NHL level. I don't think he'll be a center like the website here says he is. I think that things like his physical game will start to come, and I think that he'll kind of start to learn what his limits are, I would say, because he is incredibly smart and incredibly good skater, but I think the skill doesn't necessarily match up with his ability to assess the game, because he always has really good ideas where he's about to make a good play, and then the pass just doesn't quite get there, and that's just something that I notice a fair bit with him, and maybe the skill will kind of start to develop over the next couple of years. But at the very least, incredibly smart player, incredibly hardworking, and I think that a lot of the buzz on him is definitely warranted, and for him to go to Calgary, I think that would be amazing. Next up, we have the New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils will probably just be looking to add whoever they believe is the most NHL-ready player available to add to their core, and I think that that's going to be Michael Bronseg-Nygaard from Norway, who played very well in the Swedish second league this year. Has a very high motor, good shot, and I think that he would be able to come over and play for New Jersey right now. Frankly, I think that you probably don't want to rush him like that, and there probably isn't a great spot for him in the lineup currently. But I think 2 years from now, he will be a mainstay, and he'll be physical and able to provide depth scoring right away, and eventually develop into a really good top six forward. Next up, we have the Buffalo Sabres. Now, they're in a bit of a tough spot because what they really need is a right-handed defenseman. That's no longer on the board. So do you go with another left-handed defenseman and you end up with a core of 5 left-handed defensemen eventually? It's hard to say. I think that just makes somebody expendable, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea if that's what's kind of the best thing on the board right now. I also like the idea of potentially Konsta Helenius to them. Just another really close to NHL ready kind of player, just jumping in to help their kind of middle six. So I think in this case I might actually do that. I'm not in love with that pick because I think that if they were in this situation, they would either probably take the best defenseman available and not really care about what side they play, or they would just trade down and try and be more in range to take a guy like Henry Muse or Adam Juracek, Charlie Ehrlich, somebody like that. But I think that in this scenario where trading down isn't possible, I think Hellenius does make some sense, even though I think that their forward core is already pretty solid. Moving on to Philadelphia. Philadelphia will have them taking Zeev Boyum. They could definitely help bolster their defense a little bit right now. Really, they're kind of in a situation where they have a lot of the core pieces in place. They just need that high-end, top-end talent, and I think Boyum has that upside to be quite good for them. So that makes a lot of sense there. They also have a prospect that played with him this year in Massimo Rizzo, at the University of Denver, so there is a bit of a connection there too. So they probably also got a lot of opportunities to watch him, which, something to keep in mind. Next up, we've got Sam Dickinson. He's going to be going to Minnesota in this mock draft. That's something that I've kind of put a lot into my mock drafts, is him going to Minnesota. I think it just makes sense fit-wise. They need another really solid two-way defenseman, and Sam Dickinson really fits that bill for them. And I really like the way that their forward core is starting to develop. They've got guys like Liam Ogren and Yuri Kuznetsov. Is it Yuri? Did I get that right? I don't know if I got that right. And Danil Yurov as well is going to be there relatively soon. They had Height from the Riley Height from the WHL played incredibly well this past season and could be ready for the NHL next year as well. So things are starting to really look good for them up front. Just adding another defenseman to the mix, I think, is going to be really good for them. Next up, we have San Jose, and they are laughing because Cole Iserman, the best goal scorer in United States development team program history, is still on the board. Potentially, I think he might go as early as 7 there to Ottawa. Maybe even Montreal could be interested in him, not sure. But, to have a guy with that kind of goal-scoring upside still be available to you at the 14th pick, I mean, they would be absolutely laughing about it. But I think when you look at the way fits work and the concerns that he's not a very well-rounded player that some people have, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that this kind of a fall would happen. That being said, I think that NHL teams will like him a whole lot more than the media seems to these days, where they really knock him for basically only because he didn't meet their expectations this year. They thought he was going to be the second best player in this draft, and as soon as he wasn't, they were like, okay, I don't even know if you're top 15 now. Yeah, not the same way for me. He is actually still the 5th player on my board. I think that goal scoring ability like him is so rare and hard to come by. It's a whole lot more valuable than people are giving him credit for. And anyways, with that being said, we move on to the Detroit Red Wings, and there's a pick that I really love the fit for, and that's Beckett Seneke from the Oshawa Generals, who's just having an unreal playoff run. And I think that Detroit's in a place where they want a guy like him who could be a very good playoff performer for them, because they could be in the playoffs as soon as next year. They were really close this year, So I think defensively, I like the way that they're going to be shaping up with guys like Edvinsson emerging. I really like, is it Wallinder? I think Tom Wallinder was the Vancouver pick. There was another guy, similar name. Love his play, two-way defenseman as well. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Sandin Pellikka, he does have a really good offensive upside, and they just signed him today. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits into that future defensive core. I think, with all that being said, that means the offense is definitely where they want to address a little bit more. And I think that getting a guy like Seneke, who, grew a fair bit from last season. I think he was 5'10" last season, grew to a 6'2". And it took him a little bit longer to kind of learn to play with his new size. But he's definitely gotten to that point now with Oshawa, and I think if he had played that way the whole season, we'd be talking about him as potentially a top 10 pick. but definitely the way he's played in the playoffs this year has solidified himself as top 15 right now. And moving on to the St. Louis Blues, well, I keep doing the same one for them every single time. That is Henry Muse. I like this fit for him a fair bit. I think that St. Louis is in a place where they want to try and make some changes on their back end because they've been kind of stuck with the same core of guys because of the no move and no trade clauses. We'll see if they get a little bit creative and find a way to move on from potentially Parayko this off-season, as he's been, talked about in draft rumors or trade rumors for a while. And I think Muse is a good fit for them in the future, a good right-handed two-way defenseman who really focused on the defensive side of his game for the first half of the season, and then the offensive side started to emerge more and more as the season went on. He had a good under-18 tournament, was definitely very noticeable for Canada. And obviously, in the relatively short playoff run that he had with the 67s, looked good in those games as well. So I think he's a guy that is going to start to come up boards a little bit more for people, and especially with the value of him being a right-handed defenseman too. Moving on to the Washington Capitals. Sorry, just getting some water there. The Washington Capitals, well, I think they could really use some puck moving on their back end, especially with, with Carlson getting older there, and also, aside from that, really Sandin is your main puck mover as well. So I think a guy like Cole Hudson, this is a little early for me for Cole Hudson to come off the board personally, but I can't deny the offensive upside that he brings. I think he needs to develop more as a more well-rounded player. I think that he's going to have to find a way to get more comfortable with physicality, but I think if he does those things, he definitely has the upside of being a top four defenseman, and I think that's really what the Capitals need to address the most right now. I think, despite the fact that Ovi is getting older now, and they're, trying to figure out they have to figure out what their identity is going to be post Ovi. I think that being said, there are good forwards that are going to be in place there. Guys like McMichael are starting to look pretty good. Alexei Protash and, Hendrix Lapierre was showing some flash as well. And then, of course, they got John Leonard last year in the draft. And I'm excited to see how... Is it John Leonard or is that his brother? Why am I blanking on that? Anyways, the Leonard that they drafted is going to be, a key piece for them in the future. And, it's just going to be kind of about finding the right top four defense to work with that. Next up for the Islanders, I really like the option of them selecting Michael Hage, a good playmaking, well-rounded centerman, good skater, great offensive instincts. I think that he will project out to be a really good second-line center for them behind Barzal, or, behind Horvat if Barzal moves to the wing kind of thing. It gives them a bit more flexibility there. It allows them to play their top players together, or it allows Hage to potentially play with Barzal, or, a lot of options there, because I think when you look at the way that their lineup would be best suited going into the next few years, I think it looks a little bit better with Horvat and Barzal playing together, or either way, one of those guys not playing center, one of those guys playing the wing, and so adding another high upside offensive centerman, allows them that flexibility. The next pick for the Golden Knights, I'm going to have them selecting Nikita Artemonov. I think that they really are going to be looking for players who are closer to NHL ready, as cap issues are going to start to become a bit of a problem for them. So they're going to want guys who can come in and play well and instantly. So Nikita Artemonov is great. He's a really good forechecker, has really good offensive instincts, played great at the KHL level this year. You don't get to see a lot of guys who are in their draft year play as many games in the KHL as he did and put up as many points as he did. So he was a really solid mainstay of what I believe was their third line for most of the season. and of course as well in MHL action he looked really, really strong there. So I really like this fit, and I think this is going to be a pick that I continue to leave in place as we get closer and closer to the draft. Moving on to Chicago, the first time up they got Macklin Celebrini, so I think this might be time for them to try and address their defense potentially, and so just kind of looking at the best options when I look at my board. I don't love, so Charlie Elick would be the next guy off the board. I don't love that fit. Yeah, and I don't really love the Adam Juracek fit either. I would like to try and get them a left-handed defenseman, even though I know they have Korchinski, they have Vlasic in place there. Maybe right-hand defenseman is the right way to go, as long as, I think they need to look for offensive upside. So just kind of looking at those things and keeping all that in mind. Like Luca Morelli from Oshawa would potentially be there, but I don't see him going in the first round, and especially not that high. So maybe we pivot from that and we just go with another forward. I think that Igor Chernyshov would be good here. Good speedy winger, good offensive abilities, good size-wise. In my viewings of him, I've been pretty impressed. I think that there's a lot of upside there, but he will probably fall because there's a lot more mystery and unknown with the Russian players right now. So definitely a lot of upside. Could go as high as top 15, could fall as far as, I could see him falling to like 30, With LA, I'm trying to convince myself that this is going to be the move, and when you look at them, I was a big fan of the goalie they drafted last year, Hunter Slakinski. I thought that was a good pick. He played quite well for them this year, he played quite well this year, so that could be potentially the guy they're thinking of as their goalie of the future, because that is definitely a need they need to address one way or another. And Carter George, I'm not sure that a goalie is going to be a first-round pick in this year's draft. It's really hard to say. But when you look at LA, who really goalie would be their biggest need, and they have a lot of prospects right now. They're very deep in their prospect pool. When you look at the second round, they don't have their own second round pick. They would probably have to acquire another one if they were looking to try and get one of the top goalies in this draft. So why not take your first round pick, use it on the guy that you know is the best goalie in this draft in Carter George, and just run with it. Because I don't think they'd be the only team that would be thinking about that. I think the Avalanche might think about that as well at 25. So if you're worried that maybe they're going to take the best goalie in this draft, you got to do it before them. And I think that Carter George definitely has the upside of being an elite NHL goaltender. So I think that, but at the same time, you got to be patient with goalies. So that's why they don't often go in the first round, is because you don't know when you're going to see them. It might be 4 or 5 years down the road. So you just have to do it right. But I think that, when LA really looks at their long-term plans, I think that they may see things this way. Next up, we have Nashville, and Nashville will be looking to add probably just the best player available at this point, because I do like them long-term at forward, at defense, and at goaltending a decent amount. I think that they're still lacking kind of the high-end prospects of the future for becoming an elite team with the prospect pool that they have, and I don't really think that there's anybody here necessary. Well, actually, you know what? That's not sure. There is somebody here that I think that could really, help them fix that, and that's Trevor Connolly. Connolly is a controversial player, and I won't get into the controversy too much. You can look it up if you'd like. But skill-wise on the ice, he is definitely one of the best players in this draft. He is a great playmaker, great stick handler, and skater. So I think that, for Nashville, they I don't know if they'll be willing to swing on him, but if they are, they'll be getting a really good player. So I think that if you look at things that way, definitely a interesting player to watch moving forward towards the draft. But I do like that landing spot for him as far as him getting a fair bit of opportunity right away. Next up, we have the Leafs, and I'm going to have them selecting E.J. Emery, I would say the second best pure defensive defenseman in this draft, after Soleil, and obviously a right-handed defenseman, which is something Toronto is really needing. I think that he's a guy that, when he makes the NHL, if paired with Morgan Rielly, would allow Morgan Rielly to take more risks and, play more in the offensive zone, while E.J. Emery can kind of be the safety net alongside him. So obviously, from an offensive perspective, I don't think E.J. Emery offers a whole lot, and maybe he'll start to develop that when he goes to North Dakota to try and develop that game a little bit more. But, overall, I think that that's kind of the fit and the type of player that Toronto is looking for. So I think it would be kind of between E.J. Emery or a guy like Charlie Ehrlich. But I think if you're looking for a shutdown guy, it's hard to do better than a guy like Emery. All right, next up we have the Anaheim Ducks, and I think they're still in a place of just kind of looking for the best player available. Well, no, I think they're going to look for guys that kind of fit the intangibles that they're looking for, because they've started to fill out what their top six is going to look like. I like their defensive prospects a lot already, and I don't see any left on the board that would really improve their defensive prospect pool too much. So I like Tanner Howe a lot because he's a great forechecker. He's a great physical presence, even with a smaller frame. He plays bigger than he is, and there's offensive upside there too, so there's a lot of versatility with him. I think at this point in the draft and this point in Anaheim's rebuild, that's the type of player that they need to be targeting. So I like the fit there a lot. Next up, looking at the Avalanche, they're just going to be looking for high upside players, and that's got to be Emil Hemming, who just had an incredible U18 tournament, showed how good of a shooter he is, and I thought his season overall was pretty good, but I think, we could see him rise a fair bit more than that, but just with how I saw this falling, he ends up falling a bit more than I probably would expect. So great shooter. The Avs are just going to be looking for guys to kind of fill spots as cap issues start to kind of set in, and I think that Hemming will be definitely a high upside guy for them. Okay, looking at the Sens now after they miss out on. They end up taking a right-handed defenseman in Carter Yakimchuk. That's right. So I think top six forward, or middle six forward, that's kind of what the target is going to be for them at this point. And they get very lucky that a guy like Liam Greentree falls this far, because that's just kind of how the board fell for them. But high upside guy with a bit of size, definitely good offensively. I think it's a good fit for the Ottawa Senators and the style of hockey that they want to play. Looking at the Montreal Canadiens next, I think that Sacha Boisvert is a good fit, although we did get Berkeley Catton already, so I'm going to pivot away from that, because Sacha Boisvert is a guy that I've given them quite a few times, but this time not so much on that. I think Maxime Massé might make more sense. He's a guy that I've been a big fan of this whole year. I think that his offensive instincts are really good. I think he has the capability to play more physically than he has at the Q level, and I'd like to see him develop that side of his game a little bit more. But I think he has the upside of a really good middle six forward, potentially even a first line forward with the right chemistry. So I like that a lot for the Montreal Canadiens. Looking at the Carolina Hurricanes, I'm going to have them taking Sacha Boisvert because hard to say how long Kuznetsov will stick around there. Obviously, he's been a good fit for now, but I think as you're trying to kind of figure out the future of that team, second-line center has been a bit of a question mark, and that's why they had to go out and get Kuznetsov to fill that spot. I think Boisvert has the upside to potentially be that type of player, although I haven't been super high on him myself. So the Flames next after taking Tejigin the first time around. So let's take a look at our options here. I'm going to take a look at my own board that I have on my second screen here. Just kind of see who some of the top guys available are. So Tarek Periskak would be the top guy left. It's just a matter of if that's the right fit, and I think it could be. I think Periskak is, I think of him a little bit like Zach Hyman. He gets a lot of his goals by going to the net, and he had a great offensive season this year. That being said, I think he benefited a fair bit playing with two really good line mates in Prince George, but not to take that away from him, because he's obviously the good type of player that drives the net and gets a lot of those tough goals, and he showed some talent scoring from the top of the circle too, so it's not like he was just scoring right in front of the net all the time, but that did seem to be where the majority of his goals were coming from. I think that that's why he's going to be a bit of a hit or miss player with a lot of people coming into this process. They'll see the production and they'll be wowed, and then they'll watch the tape and they'll think, okay, is he going to replicate that at the NHL? I think he definitely has the potential to do that. All right, the Philadelphia Flyers here, as we get here closer to the end of this first round, we have them taking, I believe, Zeev Boyum, the first time around. So I think we can address, we can add a forward here for them. So looking at players that just kind of play the Flyers style of game, that's kind of what we're looking for here. Which is the hard-working, shot-blocking, two-way, that type of game. That's what we're looking for. And I like Luke Misa potentially here for that. I think he has that kind of potential, and that's the kind of player he's probably going to need to be at the NHL level. Aside from that, I think there is a perfect fit here, and that's Cole Baudouin, who I saw, a thing recently about how he's the guy that trains him, who I guess trains a fair number of pro athletes and pro hockey players, said that 17-year-old Cole Baudouin is the hardest working player he's ever had come into his gym. He is a guy who I think has really good third line center upside. Now that being said, he could go to be as good as a second line center. I think the offense is good enough for that, but I think the defense, the physicality, just the hard-working nature of this kid is what's going to really drive his value, and I think he's just a perfect fit for the Philadelphia Flyers and John Tortorella. All right, sorry about that. I had to cut out the original ending that I had here as I was talking about a Dallas Stars player, and I had him completely mixed up for a player who hasn't played in the NHL for a super long time, so I don't know where my head was at on that. But anyways, I got the names Jyrki Jokipaka, who's the old player that isn't there anymore, mixed up with Hakanpää, who is their current player. So let me go over this again. So the pick that I have for them is Charlie Elick. So basically I was saying that if they don't re-sign Hakanpää in free agency this year, then Charlie Elick could be kind of the eventual replacement for the role that he plays. Obviously not as big, probably not as physical, but has the physicality, has the defense, so that's kind of why I like Charlie Elick as a addition to the Dallas Stars. And for my New York Rangers pick, I'm a big fan of Matvei Gridin, good offensive player with that can kind of bolster the prospect pool that the Rangers currently have. So anyways, just to kind of finish off here, I want to know if you guys would be interested in seeing an entire round 2 mock draft as well, and to see if you'd like me to go as far as to kind of use the board that I have and make a full 7-round mock draft. Now, if I were to do that, I would pretty much be relying on the board that I've created so far, and I wouldn't probably go through and describe every single player in detail too much. But if that is something still that interests you, and if there's some players in the later rounds that you would like to hear me kind of talk about more, put that in the comments down below, and like and subscribe if you like the video, and we'll try and get some more draft content out in the next few days and the next few weeks.